This presentation will discuss the Title II Part A requirement that the program be aligned with the challenging state academic standards. This requirement is part of the random validation process for the 21-22 school year. We will go over the documents the LEA will need in order to complete the random validation, as well as the specific items that TEA staff will review. Before we begin, we want to point out that documenting overall compliance with a program requirement may require several forms of documentation to be maintained locally and available upon request by TEA and/or an auditor. To ensure overall compliance with program requirements, LEAs should refer to the program guide and/or other program-related resources that reference the multiple forms of documentation required to be maintained locally. The documentation requested for submission during the random validation process may not include all forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. To complete this validation, the LEA will need the 2021-2022 Random Validation Submission Packet and Handbook that are specific to the Title II Part A alignment requirement. These documents were emailed on October 4th, 2021 to those LEAs that were selected for this validation. All the random validation monitoring resources are also available on TEA's ESSA Random Validation Monitoring webpage. The Title II Part A statute requires that Title II Part A activities carried out by the LEA be aligned with the challenging state academic standards. Looking now at the Random Validation Submission Packet for Title II Part A, Alignment with State Academic Standards. The district is required to submit documentation for Item 1.1 that would be a description of how the activities to be carried out by the LEA under Title II Part A will be aligned with the challenging state academic standards. To document compliance for this particular validation, the LEA is asked to submit for one Title IIA activity, relevant pages of the most current District Improvement Plan or relevant pages of the most current Campus Improvement Plan if the activity was campus-based. Again, this is only for one Title II activity. Issues that may result in an improvement needed status for Item 1.1 include the following. Auditable documentation requested was not submitted. Documentation submitted does not show the activity to be aligned with state academic standards. Documentation is for a state required activity and is therefore a supplant. Documentation from a prior year was submitted instead of current year documentation. The documentation required for Item 1.2 is a related activity document corresponding to the activity selected in Item 1.1. Related activity documents must be appropriate for the activities selected in Item 1.1. This chart shows examples of some possible Title II activities by class object code and their corresponding activity-related documents. For example, if the activity falls under class object code 6100 for payroll costs, such as extra duty pay for Title IIA professional development outside the regular school day, we would expect to see a related training certificate or extra duty pay request form or other document related to the Title IIA professional development that staff received. Issues that may result in an improvement needed status for item 1.2 include the following. Auditable documentation requested was not submitted. Documentation submitted does not align to the activity described in item 1.1. Documentation is for a state-required activity and therefore a supplant. Documentation from a prior school year was submitted instead of current year documentation. Specific instructions for uploading the completed submission packet and the supporting documentation are available in the 2021-2022 Random Validation Handbook for this requirement. Questions related to the 2021-2022 random validation process may be directed to program staff through the division telephone number at 512-463-9499 or the division email address essasupport@tea.texas.gov.